Hello and welcome to Piwik PRO YouTube video series. Topic of the video: how to create custom dimensions in Piwik PRO. So what we're gonna learn? We'll explain what is custom dimension, and this will include some important information that will help you configure custom dimensions. But it may also help you avoid mistakes that could impact effective analysis of your custom dimensions data. We'll then go over the step-by-step process of setting up a custom dimension, which will include some basic debugging. So, what is a custom dimension? Well, first we would need to define the term dimension. Now, there's another video where I explain this and other key concepts and terms in more depth, and I will drop the link in the description below. But for the sake of this video, dimension is a description of your data that usually contains words rather than numbers. In other terms, it's a data parameter or data attribute. Example would be a country. That is the name of a dimension, and the example values would be France or Germany or United States. Country is an example of the built-in dimension, meaning it normally collects such data out of the box. Whereas custom dimension is an additional parameter that is configured by the Piwik PRO platform user. Additional in the sense that we will collect data for such dimension on top of the built-in dimensions, and because we need to configure it, we call it a custom dimension. Okay. To make it less abstract, let me give you some examples of custom dimensions using our demo website. So this is a banking demo website, so a fictitious bank website, and we could be tracking a few examples of custom dimensions like login status to, let's say, be able to see how many logged in sessions we've had in any given date range. Visitor might be going through some sort of process of applying for a loan, and we could be checking the loan type, car loan, mortgage loan, or consumer loan, to be able to identify what type of client we are dealing with. We could be tracking a block category or block author, so those two parameters, and to be able to see block visits based on category or author, as opposed to such a granular values like page URL or page title, which might be too detailed for our analysis. For e-commerce website, although I don't have a good example of a custom dimension, but this is an e-commerce website, we could track, for example, product size, because things like product SKU or variant or brand are already tracked by the built-in e-commerce dimensions, but we'll get to that later. Now, each dimension has a scope, and obviously that includes custom dimensions. So we're going to have to decide on a custom dimension scope, and we have three options. Those are session, event, or product scope, although product scope is reserved for e-commerce website. Again, I've explained this and other key concept in a video to which I've dropped the link in the description. But it will be useful to recap on the scopes and what they are, so let's have a closer look. First, let's explain session scope. Well, we use it to capture information that describe the session, to add more context beyond regular dimensions that would describe a session. Moreover, session scope dimension records only one value per session, and if the values were captured few times in a session, for whatever reason, we would still assign the last value to that very session scope custom dimension. Now, an example of a built-in session scope dimension, just to give you some context, could be country. So the values would be France, Germany, United States, Poland. Those values would be assigned to a particular visit, particular session, and that's why it is a session scope dimension. An example of a session scope custom dimension would be, but that would depend on the website, user email or type of an account, personal versus business account, or account tier like silver, gold, platinum. Now, notice that the session scope dimension values tend to be static within session, and that's the key characteristic of the session scope dimension, whether it's a custom or built-in session scope dimension. As for event scope custom dimension, they obviously describe events. This time, however, we could capture multiple values within session. So let's take a page view event. If your website have a blog section, or if you have a blog, a good example of a custom dimension of event scope that you could use would be blog post category or blog post author. Using these, we could check them against page view metric and see popularity based on category or author of a blog, instead of using built-in dimension of the same scope, event scope, like page URL or page title, which are also very useful, but they are giving you a bit different level of context for your data. But those are just example of event scope custom dimensions. In short, Session scope dimension is an additional dimension that could describe the session along with built-in dimensions like country, channel, session entry URL, and so on. Whereas event scope dimension is an additional dimension that could describe an event, page view event, or any other like download, search, including custom event if you want to say go beyond the regular set of custom event parameters, category, action, name, and value. The good way to think about it is that both of those custom dimension types would enrich data context of either a session or event. Third scope that is used in Piwik PRO is a product scope. Again, it is used only for e-commerce websites. So, unlike session and event scope custom dimensions, it cannot be used on every website. The important part when it comes to product scope custom dimension is that it has one value per product level event. Piwik PRO has many built-in dimensions of the product scope like product name, SKU, brand, variant, price, quantity, revenue, category, and so on. Adding product scope custom dimension lets us add even more parameters and go beyond that, which is great. Those dimensions will then describe e-commerce events such as add to cart, remove from cart, orders, and so on. So that when those happen, a unique set of built-in and additional parameters, i.e. product scope custom dimensions with their values, are being captured along with those e-commerce events. Examples of product scope custom dimensions would be product size or product color. Those are not captured by default, but they could be. And the whole point of that is that we will be able to analyze our database on those product scope custom dimensions for a given e-commerce event. Okay, now let's get to the setup part of this video. The setup part will be a 5-step process. First, we'll need to add, or better put, declare a custom dimension in the analytics so that we have, let's call it a slot, to which we're going to be sending values for our custom dimension. Now, I like to think about this step as if I was adding a column in a database. Without that step, we would not know where to send the data. Second step, we need to go to Tag Manager and then add a variable. Purpose of adding a variable is to create a mechanism for data capture. Third step is adding the tag in Piwik PRO Tag Manager, which will start tracking our declared custom dimension. There could be a few ways of doing that depending on the use case, but we'll get to that in a second. It is important to know that in this step, we're going to add tag and we will pair it with the custom variable from the previous step. So the variable will be capturing value and the tag will be sending it to Piwik PRO database once triggered. Speaking of triggers, fourth step is adding a tag trigger for our custom dimension tag, which is where we decide when the values will be captured. In other words, what will trigger data capture. Lastly, once we do all that, we then need to go through the process of debugging and publishing the tag. So let's dive in. First step, I'm in the analytics under settings under custom dimensions tab. Before we declare our custom dimension, I just wanted to say that Piwik PRO platform is quite generous when it comes to the amount of dimensions that you can add. So we have session dimension, event dimension. This is where we declare our dimensions and product dimension. But what I want to say is that in here, I can see 193 slots left because we're already using some slots. But in total, when you start with Piwik PRO, for each particular website, you have 200 each for session dimension and event dimension, so total 400. And there's 20 slots for product dimensions. So I would say that's more than enough, but let's declare our first custom dimension. I'm going to use blog post. So I'm going to show how to add custom dimension using a blog post category. So I'm going to capture that and I'm going to use it as our example. So I need to declare custom dimension. And because I want to capture each and every value, so when a visitor goes from one blog post to another, if you take a look at blog posts, they all have different categories. So if a visitor goes from finance to insurances, and then they go to, say, products, each value is being captured. So I want to do that. In that case, I need to use the event scope custom dimension rather than the session scope. So that's what I'm going to do. Now you can notice that I have blog post category, date, and author already here, but I made them inactive for the purpose of this demo. So that way we are not seeing duplicated data, and so we know we are looking at the appropriate thing when debugging. So let's declare our event dimension. The process is very similar for both of these. So let's click on add an event. And I'm going to call it blog post category, and I'm going to save it. So now we see this window. So let me explain what it's all about. Now I could just save it and go to Tag Manager and set up my custom dimension, but there are different use cases. What do I mean by that? So if I were to try to capture some value for my dimension from the URL, I could extract it using this method here. So I could extract it from the page URL, and I could provide the appropriate sort of logic. So if it's a parameter, if it's a title, I could use regular expression to extract that value from the title or the URL. Now, I don't want to do that, but I just want to let you know that this is possible. So let's exit out. In here, basically as an instruction for how to create a custom dimension using Tag Manager. This is what we're going to go through, but there's also a manual setup option. So we can use JavaScript Tracker API or HTTP Tracker API to track custom dimension. So those are the alternative method. Again, we're going to use Tag Manager. So let's save our custom dimension. So let's declare it by clicking on Save button. We've declared custom dimension in the analytics. Now we can go to step 2 in the Tag Manager. So I'm already in the Tag Manager. And what we need to do, we need to add a variable. Now I already have here a variable, blog post category variable, which is a JavaScript type variable, and that captures the value, the text from the category of this particular blog post, but other blog posts as well. Now I'm not going to use this one. I would like to show you how to add a variable. So I'm going to create a new one, but I'm not going to use custom JavaScript. I'm going to use DOM element. Now, as you can see, there are other types of variables. I'm not going to go through the entire explanation of what each and every variable does. That's a topic for another video. Once it's ready, I'm going to drop it in the description. So let's go to the DOM element variable. And then in here, let's first add a name. And I'm going to use CSS selector. In order to provide the CSS selector, I need to go to the page, and in here I need to right click on the element, the finance category text, and I'm going to inspect it with the DevTools of the Chrome browser. You might need to access it differently using different browser, but that's how we do it with the Chrome browser, which I'm using. And in here we can see P element with the class post category, which contains the value finances. In order to capture that, I need to copy the class, and in here I'm just gonna use CSS selector. So in order to capture the element with the class, I need to enter dot first and then provide the post category, which is the class that I've copied and pasted from here. So I'll copy and paste it in here, and that's the CSS selector method. Now I need to check that box to extract the element. Otherwise, it would just give me a value true or false, depending whether the element is there or not. So I want to extract the value, so that's why I'm checking that box. So let's click on add the variable, and that was our second step. Now we need to add a tag. As mentioned earlier, custom dimension may have different scopes and could capture data at different moments throughout the session. So there are many different use cases for custom dimension. That's what I'm trying to say. The most popular method of adding custom dimension tag is by adding it via dedicated custom dimension template. And this is what we're going to do, but I just want to show you other options as well before we proceed. So let's click on add a tag, and before we go to the custom dimension template, let's start with the custom event, which is another way of capturing custom dimension in some cases. So let's take a look at the template. As you can see, I can add a custom dimension here. So I need to click on that, and this is where I can add a custom dimension. So in this case, while tracking custom event, we could complement custom event parameters, category, action, name, and value with additional parameters in the form of custom dimension, or just piggyback, or should I say take advantage of custom event template to track custom dimension as well. What we need to do is just to click on custom dimension. You can see I could at the same time capture 2 or more custom dimensions using one and the same template. But first we would need to choose dimensions that we want to map out. So blog post category ID 13. So that's why we declared our custom dimension in the analytics. And here we need to choose the variables, blog post category. That's the variable that we created. So that's why we created a variable, so we can pair it with the custom dimension. So that's one way, alternative way to capture custom dimensions if we don't want to use the custom dimension template. Let's take a look at another one. In an analogous way, we could use another way of capturing custom dimension using other templates, like for example, Go Conversion template or Virtual Page template or any e-commerce templates, most likely for the product scope custom dimensions. But let's take a look at one more template. So let's choose Go Conversion template. And in here we see regular template for Go Conversion, which has this additional option, just like with the custom event template, where we can add a dimension. Now, another way of capturing a custom dimension is not via template, but via custom code. Now, I'm not going to show you the process, but I do have a custom dimension which uses custom code. So that's the example of a tag. And in here we see custom code, and that sends data to custom dimension with the ID 4. And then here we see a variable that already is in place and that tracks login status. So any sort of changes for when the visitor is being logged in or logged out on this particular website. Okay, enough with digressions. Let's get to the third step, which is adding a custom dimension tag. So in this case, we're going to use custom dimension template. So let's add a name, blog post category. From here, we need to choose appropriate dimension, which is the one that we declared in the analytics, and that was blog post category. We can check if it's the appropriate one by checking the ID 13. So that's the one. And in here, we need to select our variable. So that's the one that we've added. Those are the ones that we already had in place. So I want to add the one that I've created in front of you. So I'm going to click on blog post category. Again, we could potentially add more custom dimensions, just like with other templates. Again, if we want to track, let's say, author or date, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to leave it as it is. And notice that whenever we're adding a variable, it is the name and it is surrounded with the curly brackets, double curly brackets. So that means we're using variable correctly. I'm going to leave all the settings of the tag as they are, and I'm going to add my tag. So we've got our tag, but the next step would be to add a trigger. We can actually see here a message that this tag won't fire unless we add a trigger to it. So let's scroll a little and let's click on add a trigger button. So we can choose and add a trigger. Now here we have all different options. Now I'm not going to go through all different trigger types. That's a topic for another video, to which I'm going to drop the link once it's ready in the description. But let's get to the trigger. Now, normally I would use page trigger for any regular type of website, but this is not your regular website. This is a single page application website. It doesn't reload. You can see that the page does not reload on each and every click. So we're going from one URL to another, but the page does not reload. That's the characteristic of a single page application type of website. However, let me show you what I would do if that was a regular website. So in this case, I would use page trigger. I would click next. I would provide a name. I would leave this option as it is. In here, I would provide the conditions. Page URL contains blog. I could potentially add more conditions. And the reason for that is because when I'm on this page, see, I'm not on any blog post, so there's no value to be captured. I want that value to be captured on an actual blog post like this one, where we have full URL. So in order to do that, I want to fire a tag when this is in the URL, but I want to exclude when the URL does not end with blog, or another option, does not end with blog dash. So we excluded those two options whenever a visitor ends up could potentially end up on this particular page, right? So I want to exclude that. That's why I added those conditions. But this is where I would like to really fire my tag. When the URL contains a blog, i.e. whenever a visitor goes to blog post where we can capture the category. So that's the regular page view trigger. Now, because we're using single page application website, I'm going to use different trigger, and that is history change SPA, single page application trigger. So let's provide it a name, blog post category trigger. I'm going to leave it as it is, and in here I'm going to provide exact same conditions. So contains blog, does not end with blog, and does not end with blog, like that. And let's add it. Now let's save our trigger. And now, because we have declared our dimension, because we've added our variable, and because we saved our tag and the tag is ready, we can proceed to debugging. Okay, so we're almost ready for our tag to be published. We've got the custom dimension that was declared in the analytics. We then added a variable, then we added a tag. We paired the declared custom dimension with the variable. We added a trigger. So now we can test it. To test it, we need to go to debug mode. So I'm going to click on this button, which opens up our very website in a debug mode with the sidebar. So we can see that we are on the website. Let's go to blog page. And in here, in the sidebar, we can see that we have a list of tags and we can see which one were fired. So we need to find our very own tag. So we're looking for a blog post category tag, which is here. Now it hasn't got fired, which is fine because we haven't got to this particular, to any blog post. It shouldn't fire on this page because that's how we set up our triggers. But once I click on that, it should fire. So let's click on that. We can see it got fired. So that's good. It should supposed to capture the value of finance. But let's go back to the blog page. And now let's check some other blog posts. Let's say this one, 10 life-saving tips about money. So let's click on that. Insurances, again, it got fired again. Now we could potentially click and see what was the actual script that was added to the website, because in here we were dealing with the template, but this is what was actually added to the website to push data. So custom dimension value with the ID 13, and to capture the blog post category, because that's the variable that we use. It got fired 2 times. We can check the triggers, but what we don't see is whether it captured the values properly and send it properly. So in order to check that, what we can do, we can go to analytics and then go to tracker debugger, which is here. And in here we can see the recording of any recent sessions in the last 30 minutes, 1 hour. 30 minutes is, because we're still on the page, 30 minutes is enough for us. Now, in your case, you might find it hard to find your own session. Now, I know this is my session because I'm the only one who's probably currently on this particular website. In your case, that might be hard because you might be multiple visitors at the same time. So if you want to find your very session, what you could do, you could go to page URL filter and add debug, because whenever you enter debug mode, debug parameter is being added to the URL, and that would be most likely only you at the time. So now that's what you would do, but I know this is my session. So what I need to do now is to reverse the order, because that's the very first interaction on the website, but I want to see the most recent. So I need to go to newest to oldest, and I can see the blog post. So I can see blog post, and I can see that my custom event dimension was captured properly. Event custom dimension, blog post category, insurances, which is the most recent. But if I were to scroll down, I can see the previous one, which is finances, which is also correct. So now I know that my tag is working properly. I can go back to tag manager. Now, as a good practice, it's always good to check changelog whether there are any other tags that are not supposed to be published. If you see some tags that are not ready to be published, perhaps because some of your colleagues are working in a parallel with you, you could potentially go to a tag and make it inactive. That way, when you click on a publish button, they're not going to be published, and then make them active again after clicking on a publish button. But I am happy to publish it now because I know no one else was using Tag Manager at the time. So I'm going to click on publish button and I'm going to publish changes. And that's how you add custom dimension in Piwik PRO platform. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to our channel. Check the description below to find some useful links like free Piwik PRO sign up page, community forum page, and links to related videos. Until next time.